Okay, we are seeing a positive start to the day in North America, not by much. The TSX is gaining modestly in the first few minutes of trading, up about 0.1%. The S&P a little bit stronger. Feels like, broadly speaking, you've got the story of earnings and what happens with interest rates this year. But at the end of the day, investors have to make decisions on individual stocks. And for more on that, let's bring in our opening bell guest, Jerome Hass. He's a portfolio manager at Lightwater Partners. Jerome, it's nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
I know we're going to get into some individual stock ideas that you have as an active investor, but what's been your general sense on the market so far in 2024?
The market wants to go up. So there's a perception, correctly, we think, that interest rates have peaked, and so the market's just waiting for those first hints or first actions, really, from the central bankers to justify going up.
That's a bullish sign to you as somebody who's looking for opportunity in the market?
Yes, we're definitely positive on the market, and I think it's quite broad-based, even though to date it's really been focused on the Magnificent Seven in the U.S.
Yeah, so actually that's a great opportunity. You know, when you're trying to find pockets of light beyond the shadow cast by the Magnificent Seven, what do you have to consider? Because there is that argument that at least in the short term, if you're not getting the same kind of attention, that return might not be realized in those investments. So when you're betting on something that is lesser known, perhaps by the broader market investing world, how long are you committing to that on average?
Well, it really can vary, and we focus on Canadian mid-cap stocks who get less and less attention as time goes on, and so we naturally have very low correlation with the market. So, for example, in our portfolios, we don't have any stocks that would be in the indexes, and so what the index does is somewhat irrelevant to what we do. It affects sentiment more than anything.
Okay, let's go through a couple of examples of names that you're fairly bullish on right now. So the first one is DRI Healthcare. This is a trust.
Yes.
Why don't you explain to our audience what it's all about?
So what they've done is they've taken a page from the mining sector and copied the Franco-Nevada model in terms of royalties, and they've applied it, instead of to mining companies, they've applied it to pharmaceutical drugs. And so they have a portfolio of 26 royalties across 20 drugs that effectively buy top-line stakes in drugs, much the same way that Franco-Nevada buys stakes in mines. And so what they're essentially doing is buying a little chunk of that, and they're putting in 25 to, in some cases, up to $150 million. The reason why this is interesting is it's a very stable business, and it's also a growth business right now. They're growing at mid-teen levels, and they're projected to do so for the next couple of years. It's also, we think, a nice cash flow business. It's got about a 3% yield on it. It also trades at very low multiples because there's only 4 of them that we know of in the world that have this type of model. So it's relatively new to investors. And it's still under a $1 billion U.S. market cap. And so we think it has potential to reach institutional investors in the near future.
All right. So at a time when everybody's talking about Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk and weight loss treatments, here's a name tied to the healthcare sector that isn't just appealing to you. I should note, all the analysts, there's 9 who cover it on Bay Street, they're all bullish on the stock.
Well, it's also a great time from their perspective because during COVID, there was a rush to capital that went into biotechs and to pharmaceutical companies. And now it's like a desert. No one's putting any money into the biotech sector. So if you're someone like DRI who's supplying capital to these people, it's a great time because you can get much better deals than you could 3 years ago. And so they're getting IRRs in high teens right now.
Another name that you like is Main Street Equity, which is in the real estate business, but explain how.
Yeah, well, it's very topical right now. What they provide is affordable apartment rentals in Western Canada. And so given the immigration levels that we're having in Canada, it's a great space to be in right now. And what they do is they generally buy low-end or underperforming apartments. They have their own construction teams that renovate and fix them up, put them back on the market. And as a result, they get a capital appreciation from that. But they also are able to charge higher rents for those. And we just think it's a very sweet spot to be in. They came out with results yesterday. They were up more than 20% year over year. And so we think it's a name that doesn't get a lot of attention from the street, but it should.
And those who cover it on the street, same story. They are quite optimistic on the business. And the final name you've got is Trulieve, which this is a cannabis play, which trades in Canada. Also has a pretty good rating, if you will, on average from the analysts who cover it.
Yeah, so this is a pure play in the U.S. It's nothing to do with Canadian market, who we still think is a basket case, to be honest. But they're the largest player in Florida. They've got a market share of about 40% there. And what we really like about the stock, and one of the reasons why it has a chart that looks like that, is because there's enthusiasm for the rescheduling of cannabis. So in the U.S. for the last 50 years, cannabis has been scheduled in the same level as heroin or other very dangerous drugs. And so the Department of Health has said, let's reschedule that to a Schedule III drug, which would be on the equivalent of prescription drugs. And the biggest impact for that is that their tax rates will come back dramatically for companies like Trulieve.
So all three of these names are ones you hold in the portfolio right now. And again, just real quickly, timing. Like, what's your time frame for your long position on these names? Well,
Trulieve is probably the most topical one, and there's been a lot of enthusiasm about that. You think about, there's a re-election coming up in the States, and President Biden, 70-year-old, 70 plus, he has problems attracting the younger set. What better way to do so than by liberating the cannabis industry? And so we think there's going to be a State of the Union address on March 7th. We wouldn't be surprised if he made an announcement in that. And I think that's what the cannabis market is anticipating.
They certainly